Welcome back to the Mitten. Part 2, let's learn how to retell a story without actually having the book with us. How are you going to do that? I'm going to show you. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to remember what order the animals crawled in to the mitten. So what I had to do, because I couldn't even remember right away, is I had to go back and look at the book and figure it out one by one. But if you pay really close attention right now, then I am going to help you. So you have received a paper that looks like this in the content section that you can print out. The animals that you'll get are a little bit lighter. This one was too dark. So you'll have a mitten on one side, and you'll have all 8 of the animals that crawled into the mittens right there. So the first thing that you might want to do is color in all the animals. Then take your scissors and you're going to cut. Remember, we cut on the dotted lines, just like this, and cut out each little rectangle with the animals on it. I'll show you a couple here right now. Okay, so there I have hedgehog and mole, but you're going to cut out all 8. Once you have all 8, then I want you to put them in order. Now I'm going to tell you the order so that you can do this and write the numbers on the back, okay? But pay close attention. When I went back and I looked in the book, I remembered the very first animal that crawled into the mitten. Do you know what it was? You're right. It was a mole. So I already colored, and there's the mole. And on the back of the mole, I wrote number 1 because that was the first animal that crawled in the mitten. The next animal that crawled in the mitten has big floppy ears, and it was the rabbit. And on the back of the rabbit, I wrote number 2, because that was the second animal that crawled in. Then the third animal was the hedgehog. And there I put the number 3. And I'm doing this on the back of every animal until I get to 8, because there was 8 animals. Okay, number 4 was the owl. You could also do this yourself while you're listening to the story. You could go back and listen to the story again and see if you can figure it out by yourself. Then number 5 was the big old fox. And number 6, the bear, the biggest one that got in there. Actually, I think we might have made a mistake. I think, now that I look at it, let me check my book. Sometimes teachers make mistakes just like everybody else. Oh, yes. So the badger, which I forgot, came before the fox. So I am sorry. Mole was number 1. Rabbit was number 2. Hedgehog was number 3. Owl was number 4. Then number 5 was the badger, and that's this little guy. Number 6 was the fox. Number 7 was the great big bear, which was the biggest animal of it all that crawled in. And then number 8, the very last animal that went in, was a little teeny tiny mouse. And there's the mouse. So I have put all the animals in order. Okay, your next job is to make some mittens. So you have a couple of options. You can cut out the mitten that I put here, that I gave you, and stick it on a paper bag. I like this because it's easy to put things in. And I wrote the title there, The Mitten. Your other option is you could make your own mittens or trace the mittens. And I have 2 here. And what I could do is I could use a stapler if I had one, probably need an aisle to help you, or put a little bit of glue right on the edges of the mitten, let it sit until it's dry, and then I could use it as a pocket. The other option is use one of your own mittens. Makes sense. Okay. If you have little animals at home, you could also use those. I tried to find all of them, but I didn't have them all. I did have the rabbit, and I did have the bear, and the owl, and the fox. But I didn't have the rest of them. Maybe you have them all at home. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to retell the story without having the book. And I'm going to use the paper bag. Okay, so once upon a time there was a little boy named Nicky, and he asked his grandma, his Baba, to make him a pair of white mittens. But Baba didn't want to make him white mittens because she said he would lose them in the snow. But she did it anyways. So Nicky puts on his mittens and he goes outside. And sure enough, he loses one of his mittens. And it flies away and it's gone. But that mitten's not there long before a little teeny tiny mole sees the cozy mitten and crawls inside. The mole's not there very long before a rabbit hops by and says, "Hey, move over, I'm coming in." And in goes the rabbit. And each time an animal gets in, the mitten keeps getting bigger and bigger and stretching. Then a little hedgehog comes by and he says, "Make room for me, I want to come in that mitten." And in he goes. Then a great big owl comes by. And the owl looks at the mitten and says, "Oh, that looks so cozy, I need to come in." And they don't want to argue with him because he has sharp little talons on his feet. So they make room for him. So in goes the owl. Then along comes the badger. And that mitten looks so cozy. The badger decides that he's going to go in. And by now the mitten is so big, it's like nothing else is going to fit in there. But it still stretches because then comes the fox. And nobody wants to fight with the fox. He has very sharp teeth. So they all move over and into the mitten goes the fox. And the last animal and the biggest one, they went from small to biggest, was the bear. And the bear said, "I'm coming in." And he took up almost every last little bit of space. But then there was a teeny tiny little mouse. And the teeny tiny little mouse said, "I want to come in that mitten and keep warm." So he crawled right on top of the bear's nose. And he was in the mitten. And they were all comfy and cozy in the mitten. But guess what happened? Well, they were in that mitten. That mouse on the bear's nose tickled him. And it tickled him so much that all of a sudden, the bear sneezed really loud. Achoo! And then all the animals scattered out of the mitten and ran away. And then the mitten just lay down in the snow where it was. And along came Nicky, and he found the mitten. The mitten was much bigger than it was when he first had it. But he took it home, and his Baba was really happy. Although she was kind of confused as to how the mitten grew so big. The end. I want to see if you can do a retell of the story, just like I did.